Hi, Ian Roberts and Mastering Composition. So this week I want to talk about how you capture the light plein air painting because, I'm sure you've heard the expression, don't chase the light. And that means you've set up, you're painting what's in front of you, and then you notice, oh, the shadows have shifted. Oh, the shadows have shifted. And you keep adjusting your shadows and the shapes, the lights and the darks, based on this constant change. And if you're out there for any length of time, you realize those shadow shapes are moving really fast, particularly in the early morning and the late afternoon. They're changing really dramatically and really quickly. So there's two ideas to keep in mind, or two tips. One is that, like if you're on a Grand Canyon trip like I was, and there's the morning thing to paint, you just either paint it now, there's no waiting, there's no thinking maybe tomorrow will be better, it's now or never. So those are occasions when you have to hold in your mind what you're thinking about here of what you want to paint. Like if the light is coming down the canyon wall, you have to sort of get an idea in your mind where you want it and hold that picture while you do the whole painting. So in the one sense, you need to think of the moment that you are actually saying, this is what I'm painting, and hold that idea in your mind. But then the other thing, the way I much prefer to paint, is to be in a place for several days so I can do reconnaissance. So that way I can wander around with a little sketchbook and I may be just doing thumbnails and realizing, okay, this is going to be great at 7:30 in the morning. And this one over here, this is really going to be good at 6 in the evening. And then I arrive 45 minutes to an hour before that, and I start painting. And I start painting in it, so I'm not rushed. I'm not always feeling like I'm behind. I'm just painting into it so that at the moment where I think it's going to be ideal, I'm just kind of right there with the whole process. So that way you don't feel rushed and you don't feel like you're constantly behind in the process. So I'm going to show you two images this week, actually the alley from last week, of a photograph taken 45 minutes before, and then at the time that I thought it would be ideal, and then this week's image 45 minutes before, and then the image pretty much what I want to have to paint this week. So I'll show that to you now. So there's the way it looked about 45 minutes before I really liked the shadows. And a lot of the information is there, and I can be painting without rushing, and then that's the way the shadows were. And so I'm right there painting those shadows at about the time that they're stretching into exactly the place I want them. And then there's the scene from this week, about 45 minutes or an hour before. You can see there's no light on the building, but then when I get actually into the painting process, those shadows are just starting to, arrive the way I want them, just about when I'm ready to paint them. So I simplified it a lot. I wanted us to come down into here. So I got rid of this roof here and just ran the roof straight across, got rid of that siding, and got rid of this angle here and turned this whole thing into shadow. Also, this window, which is built right on the corner there, just seemed like it's just going to be a headache, and I got rid of it and just put one simple window on that plane there. And I got rid of that thing, which is kind of a part of the building between here and here. And I got rid of whatever that thing is. It looks like there's a building back there somewhere, something else right there. I got rid of all of those. Other than the perspective, which I can deal with, I can talk with you about another time, you can see I'm just putting in the dark shape, and then you'll see that I'll have a lighter shape in there that's actually, you can see it as a green. You can see it both in the photograph and my painting. I have some reflected light in there. And then the lit side, I'm just sort of getting the shape. It's not all spiky, there's just sort of putting in the lit side, the dark side. I'm not overworking it, and then just saying good enough and moving on, and it supports its role in the painting. There I'm just sort of putting in a big mass of green, just sort of painting it in loosely into the shape, and I'll have another one. Just look here at the next place where I'm painting. You'll see there's a dark mark and a light mark, and I'm just organizing what is the right value for there. And then I moved all the way around, and in fact, it had got too dark, and I had to lighten the roof in order to get the shadow on that roof edge to pop. And then here I'm just putting in these various hedges as they move forward. Each one is slightly different color, very simple, but each one is just sort of a little different, slightly different, so that we're kind of seeing them as they come forward. And then the one that's closest to us obviously has the most form, and I'm getting a good dark shadow underneath it. And then I put in a value, still obviously in shadow, but not as dark as that shadow color underneath. And then those bushes kind of give the sense of moving back into space, one overlapping the other. Because overlaps is just the most important thing in terms of making sure we're seeing depth, and we're putting in the deep shadow underneath. And there you can see I've got a maul stick resting against the top edge just to put in some of the details, of like steps and windows and so on. Just holds my shaky hand steady. And then some more green there in the foreground. And you can see there's sort of a brown dead color and the richer, and I'm sort of interplaying the two. And then we get the sidewalk. And you'll see that I put a figure, I've sort of left a little space for it over there on the right. And I just, I messed with it a little bit and I realized I didn't want the figure there. So then here's what it looks like when it's finished. This is the way the painting looked when I got back to the studio. That tree that had gone in there, I just didn't like it. So I got rid of it and put that window in instead. You may have seen that at one point I had a figure going in there. I didn't like that either, and so I took it out. But the main thing, even though there's a couple of little bits I add, the main thing is that edge is too strong. It's holding too much attention in the image. One of the reasons is that I was jammed up against the fence and I couldn't stand back from it. And I like to be able to stand back about 10 feet, viewing distance, when I'm painting. So this is what I did. To take care of that problem, I enhanced the red right there. Now you're going to say, well, that's not very red, but it's more red than here, right? And I enhanced the contrast of the green, made it lighter, there. And now you can see that the attention does get pulled here, away from this part that I thought was a problem. And there's the finished painting where I've diminished the contrast there. I also added a little bit of form there. And then I'll show you the finished painting now. I've wanted to paint this for a long time. I pass it all the time. And I can't tell you why I wanted to paint it. I mean, often we don't know why. It just appeals to us. And so I thank you, actually, because of the YouTube channel, I actually sat down and did it. So as always, I hope that's helpful and gave you some tips and ideas for painting plein air. I will see you next week. I hope you have a fantastic week. I'm going to do a figure in sunlight in our backyard next week. And so until then, have a great week, and I will see you next Tuesday. Bye for now.